Hey everyone, it's Steve. I'm back with the weekly recap. I'm editing it right now. You can't see it, just off camera. And I got a bunch of videos here from this week. In the video description will be the time codes so you can jump to any one that you want. But here's my take on the videos from this week. I started off with why I or will I fail on YouTube, and it's a good look at the opposing forces, why anybody is on YouTube. And I don't want to spoil anything, but I think I'm gonna be here for the long haul, whether I succeed or fail by anybody else's measure. The next one is part 2 of why you shouldn't use a debit card. I find it very interesting that people want to argue with me about some of these points that I raise in these videos about debit cards. And they make good emotional arguments that are just not fact-based. And so I'm trying to present information to help you make better decisions. At the end of the day, it's always you do you, boo. The next one is about anxiety, how to face anxiety, things that you can do with it, fearless moments to overcome anxiety. It was something I was interested in researching. I think that there's some really good information in there. If you know someone that has experienced anxiety or still struggles with it, there's some good tips. Next one is a video that was the request of one of my awesome commenters about the 9/11 pilots. How could they actually do that? How could they fly those planes into the towers when they were unskilled? It must be a conspiracy. I go into the whole thing and you'll be surprised. Next one is a video all about the 48 hours that we had the toilet paper run because of the port strike panic. And probably the video that surprised me the most this week was the one on unions. Do they boost paychecks or bust jobs? I spent a lot of time researching that, and as always, the facts are much different than what you typically hear. And this one I thought was particularly enlightening, and the comments have been really informative on that one as well. Of all the ones that I did this week, I think there are 3. The 9/11 pilots. If you know anybody who has any sort of conspiracy about, the 9/11 pilots and all that, then that's a must watch for them. Do unions boost paychecks or bust jobs? That one was probably the most interesting to me from the research. And the last one from this week is the one on the porn Bitcoin scam. This is one that if you get one of these emails, it's just going to strike immediate fear into you. But I lay out, how to deal with it, what you can do to protect yourself, all this stuff, and, relax. We're going to get through this. So that's it for this week. See ya.
Hey, it's Steve. I'm back. All right. I'm going to share this with you, but don't tell anyone, okay? YouTube is stacked against creators like me, and I'm going to spill the beans on what it really takes to make it. You'd think it's all about creating good content and finding an audience, right? Wrong. Today I'm going to break down why it's so hard for someone like me to stand out and what you'd really have to do to shoot for financial success on this platform and others. Spoiler, it's exhausting and completely at odds with how I operate. Before we dive in, if you find this interesting, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Otherwise, subscribing is like giving me a thumbs up as you drive by without stopping to hear what I've got to say. And by the way, I've got videos on how social media enragement fuels engagement, why I'm on YouTube, and what I'm trying to accomplish. So, stick around and check those out. Now, let's get into why this YouTube game isn't for the faint of heart. The algorithm doesn't care about me. First off, let's talk about the algorithm. If you're not familiar with the term, the algorithm is basically the invisible force that decides what content gets seen on YouTube and what gets buried. It's like a complex formula that tracks what people like, how long they watch, and what keeps them clicking and staying on the platform. If the algorithm likes your video, it'll push it to more people. If not, well, good luck getting anyone to see it. It's going to bury it. It's not personal, it's computational. Here's the dirty little secret. The algorithm doesn't care about people like me. I could pour my heart and soul into a video, but if the algorithm doesn't think it'll keep people glued to their screens, it's going to bury it. Even if you subscribe to my channel, unless you turn on that notification bell, YouTube might decide my content isn't worth showing. So while I appreciate every subscriber, it's kind of like getting a high five from someone walking by, unless they're actually sticking around the conversation. I've been online since 1994, and trust me, I've seen it all. In fact, about 15 years ago, I had one of my websites generating nearly 30 grand a month in ad revenue from Google, just like YouTube creators get paid. And then overnight, the algorithm changed and my revenue dropped to about $300 a month. I went from ranking in the top 3 spots on a topic to showing up on page 2. And we all know that page 2 on Google is the best place to hide a dead body because nobody will find it there. Yeah, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I've seen this stuff firsthand. But here's the kicker. I'm going to post videos here on YouTube anyway, because as a grandfather with decades of experience, I got a few things to share that can help people if they actually want to listen. For those who don't want to listen, look, feel free to keep hitting yourself in the face with a shovel until you learn the hard lessons of life and reality. Have you ever felt like the algorithm was working against you? Or maybe you've seen your favorite creators disappear from your feed. Comment below. I want to hear from you and your experiences. So what you really have to do to succeed on YouTube, let me be straight with you. If you're gunning for financial success on YouTube, you're going to need to do things that I simply can't or won't. Here's what you're in for. First, you've got to aim to either entertain or enrage, ideally both. People love drama and YouTube rewards it with views. The more controversial or emotionally charged your content, the better it performs. Basically, if you're not stirring the pot or making people laugh until they cry, good luck. Next, you need to spend days, and I mean days, making flashy edits. Think of it like pulling the lever on a slot machine over and over. Quick cuts, sound effects, visual gags, anything to keep people's attention. You need to grind over every single frame, praying that you can hit that dopamine button hard enough to keep people watching. And then after all that, you still have to cross your fingers and hope the algorithm blesses you by serving your content to an audience. It's like throwing a perfectly cooked steak into a lion's den and hoping it lands on the right plate. I mean, honestly, it's exhausting just thinking about it. So what do you think? Is YouTube more about entertainment and enragement these days, or is there still space for thoughtful content? I mean, let me know below. Enragement fuels engagement. If you've spent any time on YouTube or other social media platforms, you know that outrage drives engagement. People love a good controversy. It keeps them watching, commenting, and coming back for more. And YouTube, well, it eats that stuff up. The more engagement a video gets, the more it gets promoted. But that's not me. I'm not here to enrage or entertain with spectacle. I'm here to share practical, thoughtful content that might actually help someone. I've even got a video on that dives into how enragement is the fuel for engagement, but I'm not playing that game. I'd rather leave a legacy of level-headedness than flame out in a blaze of internet drama. I've learned the hard way. I've been online for more than 3 decades, and here's something I've learned the hard way. What the platform giveth, it taketh away. If I base my self-worth or sole income on any platform, including YouTube, the overwhelming odds are I will lose. I'll end up stressed, depressed, and afraid. And I've seen it happen to creators who relied too heavily on the algorithm for their livelihood. The key? Diversify and don't put all your eggs in one digital basket, or else one algorithm can change and ruin everything. I've watched people build themselves up only to have the rug pulled out from under them when the algorithm shifted. And that's why I refuse to tie my self-worth or financial stability to one platform. I'm here to share my thoughts, lessons, and stories, but I am not banking my future on whether YouTube decides to show my videos or not. I mean, ever feel like YouTube's holding your success in its hands? Yeah, I get it. Hey, comment below if you've had your ups and downs on this platform. I'm not the flashy type. Now, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Flashy? That's not me. I'm a balding older guy. No one's coming here for flashy edits or neon jumpsuits. My style is more, let's have some real talk than let's blow something up for views. And you know what? I'm good with that. And speaking of style, when I was a search and rescue pilot, my call sign was Fire Demon because I'm a wicked good pilot. Not because I was putting on a show. It wasn't about flashy maneuvers. It was about getting the job done right. And that's how I approach YouTube too. I'm not here for the clickbait or the quick wins. I'm here to leave something behind that actually helps people. If that means fewer views, then so be it. Plus, one of my core life mottos is, if you do good things happen. Now, granted, it might take years for the payoff and it might not be financial, but what goes around does come around. And of course, my number one motto in life is don't be a dick. So that pretty much ruins any expectation that I'm going to create artificial enragement just to play the game. The battle of attention. YouTube is basically an all-out war for attention. Every time I upload a video, I'm competing against millions of others being uploaded that same day. Some creators have entire teams working on their videos. Well, I'm just one retired guy with a camera sharing my thoughts. I'm not saying I don't enjoy the challenge, but man, it's a crowded space. If my video doesn't grab someone in the first few seconds, they're not coming back. They're on to the next one. They're gone, and it doesn't matter how valuable the content is. As I said, they're not coming back. It's like trying to have a meaningful conversation in a room full of people shouting. You've got to hope they can hear you over the noise. And if you're thinking of jumping into the YouTube game yourself, well, I've got a video on how to get started, especially if you're over 65. Just know it's a grind, but if you've got something worth saying, it's still worth the shot. So what's next? So what's coming up next? Well, my next video might not be super sexy, but it's going to be a thoughtful conversation about social media literacy and what we should think about teaching kids. Or maybe it'll be about this Bitcoin gotcha scam that's scaring everyday people into paying a ransom. But hey, I'm always open to new topics, so suggest away in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So yeah, the odds are stacked. At the end of the day, the odds are stacked against me and you and anyone else on YouTube. The algorithm rewards engagement. Attention spans are shorter than ever, and flashy content rules the roost. But you know what? I'm still here. I'm giving it a shot. Why? Well, because I believe the content I'm putting out is valuable, and even if a handful of people find it helpful, hey, that's a win in my book. I've been in this game long enough to know you can't control the algorithm. I've been online, as I said, since 1994, and I've watched things change in ways none of us could have predicted. But I've learned one thing. No matter what, staying true to yourself is always worth it. So if you're ready for thoughtful, no BS content without the drama, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and let's build something real together. Until next time, be good, be safe, be smart. See ya. If you thought my last video on debit card risks was eye-opening, just wait until you hear what I've got for you today. The hidden costs and dangers of using a debit card are way worse than most people realize, and trust me, banks aren't rushing to tell you this stuff. If you haven't seen my last video on debit cards, I highly recommend checking it out after this one because we covered some really important points. But today I'm digging deeper into some new reasons why using a debit card might be one of the biggest financial mistakes you can make. Hey, I'm Steve. I'm a grandfather, a former search and rescue pilot, and consumer debt expert. I've been helping good people dig out of bad debt since 1994. I'm the author of several personal finance books, and one of which was named the Washington Post Personal Finance Book of the Month. So, I've seen a lot when it comes to money. In my last video on debit cards, part 1, we talked about some of the risks associated with debit cards, but today I'm taking it a step further. Well, get ready because what I'm about to share could seriously save you from some big financial headaches. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, ring the notification bell so you don't miss some big upcoming videos. One is going to be all about credit repair and you don't want to miss it. So let's talk about something that really bugs me. You've probably heard some personal finance gurus tell you that using a debit card is better because it helps you avoid debt. Yeah, but here's the thing. That advice doesn't hold up when you dig into the facts. So why do they push debit cards so hard? Well, let me throw out a few ideas. A lot of these gurus focus on behavioral finance and they assume people don't have the discipline to control their spending with a credit card. I get it. They're trying to help people avoid going into debt. But here's the flaw in that thinking. It's all about fear instead of empowering people to use their money wisely. Credit cards don't lead to debt, bad habits do. If you can drive a car without veering into oncoming traffic and own a set of sharp kitchen knives without stabbing people, you can use a credit card without falling into debt. It's about using it responsibly. Think of this. If you wanted, you could send a payment in daily to your credit card company to pay for new charges. You know, some of the simplified advice from popular personal finance gurus is just outdated. I mean, sure, there was a time when credit card debt was a huge issue and people got in over their heads, but nowadays credit cards offer more protections and repayment options than ever before. Debit cards haven't evolved and these gurus are still treating them like they're the safer option. Plus, they love keeping things simple. Use a debit card and you'll avoid overspending. You know, it sounds nice, but it ignores the real financial risks that debit cards bring to the table. And here's the deal. Not everyone is the same. Some people struggle with spending. Sure. But there are plenty of people who use credit cards responsibly and reap the rewards. The problem is these gurus often give a one-size-fits-all advice without considering that financial tools should be tailored to your situation. If you're responsible with credit cards, then why wouldn't you use them to earn rewards, build better credit, and protect yourself from fraud? Debit cards just don't offer those perks, but a lot of the time, that's left out of the conversation. And here's a shocker. If you have a credit card, the interest rate charged is the least important factor. If you pay your balance off in full each month, you are never charged interest, but get all the reward points to use like free cash. I mean, I haven't paid credit card interest in several decades, but I get all the perks. And let's not forget the best part of credit cards, those rewards. I haven't paid for a hotel stay in years or even some airline flights because I rack up points with my credit card, but a lot of these gurus conveniently leave out that part, assuming you'll overspend to chase rewards. Don't do that. And what about fraud protection? Credit cards cap your liability at $50 for fraud, and your money is never actually touched. With debit cards, your cash is gone the second someone fraudulently uses it. It could be days or weeks before you see a refund, and many personal finance experts don't emphasize this enough, and that's where their advice really falls short. So, what's the solution? It's not to fear credit cards, but to learn how to use them responsibly. These gurus mean well when they tell you to avoid debt, but their blanket recommendations to use debit cards misses the mark. If you're disciplined, credit cards give you rewards, better protections, and the ability to build credit. All things debit cards just don't offer. Like I said earlier, if you can handle your other responsibilities, you can handle a credit card. If you want to hear more about credit card protections and rewards, hey, check out my previous video where I break it all down. I'll link to it at the end. Now, you might have heard about overdraft fees, but here's something worse. Merchant penalty fees. Yep, some merchants will actually charge you extra if your debit card is declined due to insufficient funds. So, not only will your bank hit you with a $35 overdraft fee, but the merchant could pile on other penalty fees, doubling your financial pain. What started as a small mistake could quickly turn into a serious financial mess. So let's talk about refunds. You return something, something's canceled, you end a service, you dispute a charge. With debit cards, that refund could take days or even weeks to hit your account. And if you've got bills to pay in the meantime, you might find yourself in a tough spot. With credit cards, refunds are generally processed faster. Plus, you're not waiting to get your own money back. It's the bank's money on the line, not yours. You don't get that kind of security with a debit card. And if you're using a debit card when traveling internationally, you could get hit with some serious fees. Most banks charge foreign transaction fees every time you swipe your debit card abroad. Even if you use it in an ATM, you're likely to face extra charges from the local bank. And if your debit card gets lost or stolen, recovering your money can be a pain. You could be stranded without access to cash. But with credit cards, you've got travel perks like emergency card replacement and lower foreign transaction fees. So when it comes to traveling, credit cards just make a lot more sense. When it comes to financial freedom, building good credit is one of the most important things that you can do. Debit cards don't help you do it. They don't help you build credit at all. But using a credit card responsibly can boost your credit score. A better credit score doesn't just mean lower interest rates on loans or mortgages. It can also affect things like your insurance premiums, your ability to rent an apartment, and sometimes even your job prospects. Good credit isn't just about borrowing money, it's about opening doors to better opportunities. I've mentioned this in my part 1 video, but it's worth repeating. Banks love debit cards because they make money off every single swipe. Between interchange fees charged to merchants and overdraft fees when you make a mistake, debit cards are a steady stream of income for banks. In my last video, I went into more detail on why banks push debit cards so hard. So be sure to check that out if you want more insights about that. So if you thought debit cards were just a simple, convenient tool, I hope this follow-up video opened your eyes to the hidden dangers between overdraft fees, delayed refunds, bad personal finance advice, foreign transaction charges, limited protections, and other traps that can catch you off guard. If this video helped you and gave you some more valuable insight, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on more tips and advice. And don't forget, I've got a big video coming out on how to rebuild your credit. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see it. Hey, here's that part 1 video that I talked about. You really want to go watch it if you haven't seen it. Stay safe, stay awesome, and stay informed, and see ya! Imagine this. You're cruising through your day when out of nowhere, anxiety grabs you like a tight grip around your chest. It's as if the air thickens, your heart is racing, and no matter what you do, that wave of panic just keeps rising. You're stuck, frozen, like standing at the edge of a cliff, with fear holding you back from taking that next step. Hey, I'm Steve, a grandfather who's been through plenty of anxious moments myself. From search and rescue missions where lives were on the line, to launching new businesses, I've been in high-stakes situations where anxiety could have easily taken over. And let me tell you, fearless moments aren't about never being afraid. They're about feeling the fear and choosing to move forward anyway. Anxiety never completely goes away. In fact, to be honest, I'm a bit anxious right now as I'm shooting this video for you. But here's the thing. I can't let that hold me back. If I don't push through, I'll stay stuck. And what would that accomplish? Stick with me because today I'm sharing how you can turn those anxious moments into opportunities for growth. I love that. And by the end of this video, you'll have tools to start embracing your fearless side and taking control of your anxiety. But before we dive into today's topic, I want to make sure you don't miss out on what's coming up. So hit the subscribe button. Make sure to ring the notification bell. And here's the deal. If you don't click that bell and ask to be notified when new videos come out, chances are YouTube is not going to tell you. So you'll miss out on the strategies and insights I share nearly every day. So go ahead right now. Subscribe, ring the bell, and stay in the loop. Anxiety is more than just feeling nervous. It's that gnawing sensation that grows and grows like a knot in your chest. Your thoughts start to race, darting from one worry to the next until you feel like you're caught in a storm, unable to find shelter. It can leave you questioning everything. What if I fail? What if I mess up? What if I'm not enough? You know, we've all had those moments. One time, I had this big meeting in Washington, D.C. I was riding the metro. That's the D.C. subway system that runs both above and below ground. I was trying to mentally prepare for the meeting, just looking out the window, watching familiar sights pass by as the train rolled along. But then we went underground and it got darker and the scenery disappeared. And I remember thinking, man, it would just really suck if going underground made me feel anxious right now. And that was it. My anxiety hit like a tidal wave. My palms started sweating. My heart pounded and it felt like the walls were closing in. I had to get off at the next stop. I stood on the platform, breathing hard, feeling that panic rise. It was as if I was staring down a long, dark tunnel, which I actually was doing. That made me chuckle, and I was unsure if I could step forward, but I told myself, you can't let this stop you. And after a few minutes, I laughed at myself, got back on the train, and finished my journey. Has anxiety ever hit you like that? I mean, out of nowhere? It's like a wave crashing over you when you least expect it. If you're confident, share your story in the comments. We all want to hear how you handle it. But sometimes anxiety comes at you in even higher stakes situations. Let me take you back to my days as a pilot. I mean, picture this. You're thousands of feet in the air above the clouds and the weather below. Suddenly, the engine loses all its oil and you can feel the tension building in your chest like a balloon about to pop. Your brain starts racing. Every part of you is screaming, do something.
I'm at the land at the nearest airport. We have low oil pressure.
Are you declaring an emergency?
Declaring emergency, Quebec 431.
Master Flight 431, understand descend to maintain 4,000. Your closest airport is going to be Houston Airport. It is off your 2 o'clock and 12 miles. Runway 4 is going to be your best. Actually, runway 22 is going to be your best bet. So let's fly heading of 300 on your heading, maintain 4,000.
300 on the heading, oil pressure still dropping.
But the panic makes it hard to think straight. In moments like that, anxiety could be the difference between life and death. So what do? Well, you take control. And one of the most effective ways I've learned to handle anxiety in situations like this is through breathing. When anxiety hits, our breathing gets shallow and quick, leading to hyperventilation, which just makes everything worse. But here's the simple fix. Inhale deeply for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, and then exhale for 5 seconds. Picture yourself drawing in calm, holding it steady, then letting it go, slowly releasing like a clenched fist. This technique helps slow your heart rate and calms your nervous system, bringing you back into focus. It's like stepping out of the fog and suddenly everything is clear again. You can focus on what really needs to be done. And let me tell you, this breathing technique has saved me more than once. If it sounds too simple, think about this. Navy SEALs use these exact same techniques in their mental toughness training. It's not woke BS, and it's definitely not just for wimps. If it works for them in life or death situations, it can work for you too. I mean, have you ever tried this breathing technique? If not, next time anxiety sneaks up on you, give it a go and let me know how it feels. Another tool I rely on is mindfulness meditation. Now, I don't do it sitting cross-legged in a quiet room surrounded by candles. I do mine sitting on the porch overlooking the forest behind my house. I might look like I'm just sitting there goofing off, sipping tea and staring into the distance, but really I'm just quieting my brain for a few minutes. I'm regrouping and setting the tone for the rest of my day. So picture it, the sunlight filtering through the trees, the sound of the wind rustling the leaves, and for a few minutes, everything just slows down. That's all it takes. You don't need hours for this, just a few minutes to hit the mental reset button. If you're still thinking mindfulness is some kind of new age fluff, remember this. Again, the Navy SEALs use mindfulness too to stay calm under pressure. And if it works for them, it can work for you. Positive affirmations are another tool that can flip the script when anxiety tells you you can't. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like more motivational poster stuff, hear me out. Anxiety loves to flood your mind with negativity. You're not good enough. You're going to fail. But positive affirmations give you the power to rewire those thoughts. Picture yourself standing in front of a mirror, looking yourself in the eye and saying out loud, I am capable. I am worthy. I can handle whatever comes my way. At first, it might feel strange, but over time, these words become like armor for your mind. And if you're still skeptical, let me tell you again, guess who's using it? Navy SEALs. They're using this as part of their training. And if it's good enough for the toughest people on the planet, damn it, it can work for you too. So here's a challenge for you. The next time anxiety tries to tell you that you can't, hit back with a positive affirmation. Try it and let me know what happens. So what's the takeaway here? Fearless moments are your key to overcoming anxiety. When anxiety tries to keep you small, remember, each step you take, no matter how small, is a victory. Picture it as stepping through a door that anxiety is trying to keep locked. Whether you use breathing, mindfulness, or positive affirmations, these tools help you push that door open, taking back control of your thoughts, your emotions, and actions. So what's your fearless moment? Is there something you've been putting off because of anxiety? Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting or starting that project you've been avoiding. And tell me in the comments, what step will you take today? Because that first step, that's how you start rewriting your story. If you're interested in understanding the science behind why these techniques actually work, I've included an entire reference guide in the video description. It breaks down the research on how breathing, mindfulness, and positive affirmations can literally rewire your brain to kick anxiety's ass. And I'm also including links to videos on decision making and my in-flight emergency experience, where I break down how I stay calm under extreme pressure. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, because without that bell, YouTube might keep you in the dark. Until next time, stay fearless. See ya! Do you remember where you were when you first heard about the 9/11 attacks? Maybe you were at work or sitting at home when the news hit. Suddenly, everything stopped. The shock, the disbelief, and the fear felt palpable. Can you still see those planes barreling through the blue sky? Their impact shattering not just the buildings, but our collective sense of safety. The image of those planes crashing into the towers, it's seared into my mind and the minds of millions, as clear today as it was that morning. You've probably heard the rumor or some version of it. How could those terrorist pilots have flown large commercial planes into the World Trade Center and Pentagon? They weren't trained for something that difficult. It had to be a conspiracy theory. It had to be impossible, right? Well, that's a paraphrase of a question one of my great subscribers asked, and the answer will surprise you. As someone with nearly 4 decades of flying experience and an FAA commercial pilot's license, let's dive in to uncover the truth. This story is more about planning, training, and circumstance than some magical, impossible flying. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand how it happened, and you might be surprised by how simple it really was. Hey, before we dive in, hit that subscribe button. give this video a like, and ring that damn notification bell, or you may not be notified when the next video comes up. You have to ring that bell and say, yes, let me know. If you've enjoyed this video, YouTube's algorithm won't show you content from channels that you just subscribe to unless you've rung that bell, okay? I'm done saying that. So let's get into straight up facts and myth busting. To give you a sense of what it takes to fly a large aircraft, let me share a personal story. I had never flown a large aircraft before, and one night I entered a full-motion Airbus A320 flight simulator. These are those giant simulators that airplane pilots train on. I walked across the gangway, took my seat in the captain's left-hand position. It was dark. I was completely unfamiliar with the cockpit, never having been in one. But after a few minutes of orienting myself, I could control the aircraft with ease. The simulator controllers would set up the airplane in cruise flight, and I would have to find the airport and land. And once I landed, they would set the plane up in cruise flight again at a different city, a different airport. I'd have to do it all over again. Even though I had never flown this massive aircraft before, I was able to successfully find the airports and execute landings in multiple countries. With my experience, I know that I'd be fully qualified to enter the cockpit on any commercial flight, even though I'd never flown one. If there was an emergency, I would be able to control the aircraft. Now, imagine that I didn't have to land or take off, just fly straight and aim for a giant visible target. Now, that's essentially what the hijackers had to do on 9/11. They didn't have to master the difficult parts of aviation like arrivals or departure coordinating with air traffic control. They took over aircraft that were already in flight and just used basic navigational skills. Now let's talk about the hijackers. These weren't completely untrained amateurs. Atta, who flew Flight 11 into the North Tower, trained extensively in small aircraft, earning a commercial pilot's license after logging hundreds of hours of flight and simulator training on large aircraft. Al-Shahi flew Flight 175 into the South Tower. He trained with Atta, obtaining similar qualifications and experience with Boeing aircraft in simulators. Hanjour, Flight 77, into the Pentagon, well, he was the most formally trained of the group with a single-engine commercial pilot certificate and logged hours in small aircraft. The descending turn he performed towards the Pentagon was a right-hand descending turn, a maneuver he had performed hundreds of times in his flight training and demonstrated competency during his flight examination in the air. It wasn't the death-defying feat people imagine. It was well within his training. And while none of these men were expert pilots, they had enough experience to control an aircraft in flight. And as I'll explain, the conditions they were working with made hitting their targets much easier than many believe. I'll never forget that day. At the time, I was living just outside Washington, D.C. My staff and I were crowded into the conference room, watching the events unfold on television in complete disbelief. In just a few hours, the skies over my house were filled with fighter jets and military helicopters, while everything else, every civilian plane was grounded. The silence in the air mixed with the roar of the military aircraft was scary and frightening and just so sad. That moment and the feelings that came with it have stayed with me ever since. Yeah, I know it sounds complicated, steering massive planes into buildings, but the more you break it down, the simpler it becomes. Want to know how they navigated to those targets? You'll be surprised how straightforward it actually was. But before we get into that, let's look at the maneuvers themselves. Let's be clear. The maneuvers that some call precise weren't as tricky as they seem. Here's why. Flight 11 and 175 into the World Trade Center towers, the hijackers were just flying Boeing 767s. They're large, but with very advanced navigation systems. The World Trade Center towers were enormous, visible from miles away. Atta and Al-Shahi didn't need to perform any complicated stunts. They simply flew straight and aimed at the towers. The weather was clear, making the task even easier. Flight 77 into the Pentagon, Hanjour's right descending turn into the Pentagon, it wasn't advanced. It was a basic descending turn. one that Hanjo had practiced hundreds of times during his training and demonstrated as part of his air examination. The Pentagon, like the World Trade Center towers, is a massive, unmistakable landmark from the air. Spotting it and flying toward it was straightforward. I mean, to put it into perspective, when I flew the Airbus A320 simulator, I had never been in that cockpit before. And I was navigating over unfamiliar dark skies. Even in those conditions, I was able to find the airports and land with relative ease. The hijackers didn't have to land their planes. They just had to aim. So how did they navigate? Were they expert navigators, or did they have inside knowledge? Not at all. Now about navigation. No, they weren't skilled navigators. They didn't need to be. They had flight management systems in the aircraft, FMS, and autopilot, which do a lot of the heavy lifting. Once they were in the vicinity of their targets, they disengaged the autopilot, switched to visual navigation. And think about it. The World Trade Center towers and the Pentagon are huge, visible landmarks. It wasn't like finding a needle in a haystack. It was like spotting a lighthouse on a clear night. Without needing to communicate with air traffic control or follow standard flight protocols, their mission was simplified. They just needed to fly the planes straight into the targets. With the help of modern aircraft systems, that's exactly what they did. So, to answer the question, were these hijackers unskilled and did they somehow perform expert-level flying? Well, the reality is much simpler. They had enough training, used advanced navigation systems, and their targets were large and clearly visible. From my experience as a pilot, hitting those targets was not a difficult task given the conditions and the tools at their disposal. It was tragic and horrific, yes, but from a technical flying perspective, it was achievable with the skills they had. So, the next time someone tells you that the 9/11 hijackers were too unskilled to pull off the attacks, remember that the facts don't require a conspiracy to explain what happened. They had the training and the tools and the opportunity. If this breakdown helped clarify things for you, go ahead, hit subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and let's keep the discussion going in the comments. And don't forget that notification bell, because if you're here for facts and myth busting, you don't want to miss the next one. Hey, also check out the giant reference guide I've got for you in the video description if you want to dive deeper into the details. Stay curious, stay critical, and keep questioning the myths that don't add up. Keep your comments and questions coming. Until next time, see ya! Port strike panic. Should you rush to buy toilet paper? Well, that's the question everyone's asking right now, and by the end of this video, I'm going to surprise you. This situation is the perfect example of facts versus fear. Hey, we'll break down what's really happening, how it could affect you, and here's the kicker. Why panic buying toilet paper might actually create the very problem you're afraid of. Hey, stick around because what you learn today will change how you think about all of this. Now, do you remember the toilet paper madness of 2020? People scrambling, hoarding rolls like they were the key to survival. It's tempting to think we're heading there again with these port strikes, but here's the real question. Is this fear justified, or are we reacting to something that's not really a threat? Hey, let's see if the facts back the fear. So here's why this matters. You've probably heard about the ongoing port strikes, and if you're like most people, you're worried that essential goods like toilet paper might vanish from the shelves. That fear feels real, but here's the fact you probably don't know. Most of the toilet paper we use in the United States is made domestically. That's a game changer. Unlike electronics or clothing, which rely on imports, TP doesn't rely on as much international shipping. I mean, imagine this. You walk into your local store and the toilet paper aisle is completely empty. Your stomach drops. Flashback to 2020. But hold on. Before we panic, let's talk numbers. Over 90% of the toilet paper is made in the U.S. It's locally produced by companies like Georgia Pacific and Kimberly-Clark. It's manufactured here, it's distributed here, and it's designed to meet domestic demand. Yet some materials like wood pulp are imported, but the actual product is made and stockpiled right here in the United States. Because this is where things get interesting. Even with the port strike, the toilet paper supply is far more insulated than most people think. And here's the part that might surprise you. The real danger isn't the strike itself, it's panic. If we start panic buying, we create the problem we're trying to avoid. Shelves go empty, not because of the strike, but because fear drives us to grab more than we need. So should you rush out to stockpile? Well, the facts say no. Based on what we know, manufacturers have prepared for situations like this, unless people start hoarding. And there's no need to worry about that. It's not the supply chain that's the problem. It's fear driving us to overreact. And now let's break it down. What's the bottom line? It's smart to be prepared, but the surprising truth is that because toilet paper is domestically produced and manufacturers have taken steps to stock up, there's no need to clear out the shelves. We're in a much better place than we were in 2020. But this is about more than just toilet paper. This is about how fear can take over and push us to act irrationally. It's fear that causes the rush, and it's fear that leads to empty shelves, not necessarily the situation itself. So before you run out to buy more than you need, remember the facts show us the U.S. toilet paper industry is strong, and unless we let fear drive our actions, there won't be a shortage. As always, I've included a reference guide in the video description so you can check out all the facts for yourself. If you like this video, watch this one and continue your learning journey. And until next time, see ya! Do unions boost paychecks or just bust jobs? You know, it's a question that's been debated for decades. And if you're like most people, you've probably heard strong opinions on both sides. Well, today we're going to dig into the facts, cut through the noise, and see what unions really mean for your paycheck and your job opportunities. And here's the kicker. If you stick around until the end, I'm going to reveal something shocking. It will surprise you. I'm going to tell you what the average American's paycheck could look like today if wages hadn't stagnated in the 1970s. You won't believe how big the difference is. And as always, I've included a reference guide in the video description with all the facts from today's video, so you can do your own research and learn more. And be sure to check it out and drop your thoughts in the comments. I always want to know what you think. Have you ever felt stuck in your job? I mean, like, no matter how hard you work, your paycheck just doesn't seem to move. You see costs rising everywhere. I mean, groceries, rent, energy, but your pay isn't keeping up. You're not alone. Millions of people across the United States are feeling that same squeeze. And that raises a big question. Why? What if I told you one of the reasons might be tied to something you don't think about every day? The decline of unions. And here's the thing, whether you work in a union or not, the presence or absence of unions might have an impact on your paycheck and working conditions. Now, let's break it down. Back in the 1970s, about 25% of American workers were part of a union. This gave workers the power to collectively bargain for better wages and benefits. Unions fought to ensure that when worker productivity increased, wages rose alongside it. But since the 1970s, union membership has plummeted. Now, only 10% of workers are unionized, with even fewer in the private sector, only about 6%. And here's the critical connection. As union membership dropped, wages stopped keeping pace with worker productivity. From 1948 to 73, wages and productivity grew together. But after the decline of unions, productivity kept rising while wages stagnated. According to the Economic Policy Institute, worker productivity increased by 77% between 73 and 2020, but wages only grew 12%. In other words, workers became more efficient and produced more, but the benefits of that productivity didn't show up in their paychecks. While unions can secure higher wages and better benefits, critics argue that these gains can come with downsides. For example, unions may increase labor costs, which could lead companies to raise prices for customers or even cut jobs to offset the costs. It could decrease business flexibility. Union contracts often include strict work rules and seniority-based promotions that limit a company's ability to adapt quickly to changes in the market or new technology. Now, this isn't to say unions don't work, but it's something businesses and workers have to weigh when considering unionization. Sometimes unions might unintentionally make it harder for a company to innovate or stay competitive. But remember, I've got that big surprise about the potential gains unions could have made for your paycheck. And it's coming up soon, so stick with me. Now picture this. Imagine you go to your boss alone and you ask for better pay, just you. I want better pay and better working conditions, but maybe you ask for health benefits or more reasonable hours. What are the chances that your one voice will make a huge difference? I mean, your boss might listen, but at the end of the day, they know you're just one person. They could find someone else willing to take your job. But now, imagine if all the workers went together. Everyone's standing in unity, represented by a common voice. That's what a union does. It's not one person knocking on the door. It's an entire workforce saying, hey, I think we deserve better. And when that many people are pushing together, the company has to listen because they know their entire operation could be impacted. Let's talk about executive pay, especially in unionized versus non-unionized companies. Research shows that in non-union companies, the CEO to worker pay gap has skyrocketed. In many non-union workplaces, CEOs are making 300 to 400 times the average worker wage. But in unionized companies, that gap is much smaller thanks to unions negotiating fairer wages for all levels of employees. The reason for this difference? Well, it's because unions push for collective bargaining agreements that limit excessive executive compensation and ensure a fair distribution of income across the workforce. Meanwhile, non-union companies don't face the same pressure, allowing executive salaries to balloon while worker wages stay relatively flat. Remember that big surprise I teased earlier? Hang tight. We'll get to that soon, but keep this pay gap in mind because it's all connected. Have you ever scrolled through your social media feed or tuned in to an opinion-based news channel and heard anti-union messages? You might have seen ads or headlines claiming that unions are just bad for business, they cost jobs, and they drive up prices. These kinds of messages are often promoted by the big companies with the money to shape the narrative. As I revealed in my video, hey, think you're in control of your Facebook feed? About 70% of people get their news from social media without fact-checking it first. And that's where many of these messages come from. I believe you might have been told those things, but that doesn't make them real. I'm going to link that video at the end so you can watch it next. Now, corporations like Walmart and Amazon and others have invested heavily in anti-union campaigns, using slick marketing to push a message that unions are the problem. But what they don't tell you is that these campaigns are designed to keep wages low and profits high. And here's the thing. Workers don't always get the same platform to tell their side of the story. So it's easy to see how people can be misled by one-sided arguments. That's why it's so important to think critically about where these messages are coming from and who stands to benefit. Now, before we get into more numbers, I want to share with you a personal story. In my decades of helping people with financial troubles, I've had a front row seat to see how unions work to support their members. My company and I were brought in by large unions in the automotive and pharmaceutical industries to provide financial education and help workers struggling with difficult financial situations. What struck me was how deeply concerned these unions were, not just about the wages and benefits, but also about their workers' mental health and overall well-being. They wanted to ensure that their members had the resources they needed, whether it was assistance with managing debt or dealing with unexpected crises. These unions paid for the services because they understood that financial stress and personal struggles can affect a worker's life, both on and off the job. The unions weren't just focused on negotiating contracts. They were there to provide support when their members really needed it most. Have you ever heard someone say, when unions push for higher wages, it makes everything more expensive for the rest of us? Well, it's a common argument, and it sounds like it makes sense, but let's break it down. Here's the truth. The cost of living is affected by a lot of things, way more than just wages. Think about housing prices, which are driven by supply shortages, or even energy costs, which rise and fall based on global markets. Then you have healthcare costs, which go up for all kinds of reasons, like innovation and insurance policy changes. Even if unions negotiate higher wages, that doesn't mean prices go way up for everyone. Often the increases are small and businesses can absorb the costs. Plus, when workers have more money, they spend more, which helps the whole economy grow. That means more jobs and more money circulating, benefiting everyone, even in your local market. Let's talk about Walmart. Have you ever heard about companies actively fighting against unions? Well, Walmart is a prime example. They've spent years pushing anti-union messages through training videos and presentations. They tell workers that unions are just businesses looking to take their money from their paychecks. But what they don't tell you is how unions help employees negotiate for better pay and working conditions. Walmart goes as far as telling their managers to look for signs of union activity and report it. They want to stop unions before they can even get started. The problem is when companies push back like this, it doesn't just hurt Walmart employees. It hurts workers everywhere because without unions, wages stay low and job protections weaken. Ever heard someone ask, hey, why should I have to pay union dues if I don't want to be in a union? Well, it's a fair question. Nobody likes paying extra, but here's the thing. Those dues go toward negotiating for higher wages and better benefits and workplace protections. Even if you're not directly involved, the union helps set a standard that benefits everyone in your workplace. Think of union dues like insurance premiums. You pay into a system that gives you security and collective power when you need it most. Whether you're facing layoffs, health and safety issues, or negotiating for a raise, those dues are what help secure better outcomes. And without dues, unions wouldn't have the resources to fight for fair contracts or legal protections for you. Let's talk about Amazon. You've probably heard that workers at Amazon have been trying to unionize to improve their pay and conditions. Amazon says they don't need a union because they already get paid well enough. But here's the problem. Without a union, workers don't have as much leverage. If Amazon decides to cut benefits or make them work longer hours, what can one person do? Probably not much at all. Unions give workers the power to speak together. It's not about one person against a giant corporation. It's about a whole group fighting for fair treatment. Without that, the only choice workers have is leave and hope the next job is better. And here's where we start to see the bigger picture, a clue that leads us to that shocking number I mentioned earlier. Here's something else you don't hear often. There are companies that actually embrace unions. One of the best examples is Costco. Costco has a strong relationship with the Teamsters Union, which represents many of their employees. The result? Costco is one of the most profitable companies in retail, while also being one of the best places to work. Their CEO has publicly said that paying their employees well and working with unions leads to higher employee loyalty, lower turnover, and a more productive business. So, the next time you hear that unions hurt businesses, remember Costco, because they prove that treating workers fairly can actually be good for business. Now, here's that part I promised, the big surprise. Did you know that if wages had continued to grow at the rate they were before in the 1970s, the average American worker today would be making around $44,000 more per year? That's right, 44 grand more. That's how much wage stagnation has cost us since unions lost much of their power. Here's the connection. When unions were stronger, they fought to make sure that productivity gains were shared with workers. But as unions declined, wages stopped keeping up with productivity. Workers became more productive, but most of the financial reward went to the top CEOs and shareholders. Some might argue, well, if wages had grown like that, wouldn't prices just have gone up too, eating away all those gains? Yeah, but here's the reality. While some prices may have risen, productivity has steadily increased over the years. That means we're producing more than ever before, but workers aren't receiving a fair share of that value. If wages had kept up with productivity, the rise in the cost of living would not have canceled out that extra 44 grand in income. I mean, imagine what an extra $44,000 a year could mean for your life. Better vacations, more retirement savings, or maybe just not having to worry so much about bills. That's what wage stagnation has cost millions of Americans. Now let's imagine a world where unions didn't exist at all. What would life look like for workers? Well, without unions, wage stagnation would likely get even worse. Companies wouldn't feel pressure to offer better pay or benefits. The gap between CEOs and workers would keep growing. Middle class would shrink, and we'd probably see fewer protections for workplace safety. Overtime pay and benefits like healthcare and pensions would become even rarer. In industries where unions are weak, we already see lower wages and less job security. Without unions, it would be a lot harder to push for better working conditions or fair treatment. Workers would have little bargaining power, and if you didn't like how your company was treating you, the only real option would be for you to leave and hope you could find something better somewhere else. And now, you know more of the story. If you like this video, watch this one next to keep learning. Until next time, see ya! In today's video, I'm going to give you all the facts you need to protect yourself from one of the most heart-stopping online scams out there, the porn Bitcoin gotcha scam. This is the kind of scam that makes your stomach drop, the moment of sheer panic where you ask yourself, what if this is real? I'll break down how it works, why it's so effective, and what steps you can take to stay safe. If you watch the entire video, you'll have the tools to protect yourself from becoming the next victim. Imagine this. You're sitting at your desk, scrolling through your emails, and one subject line stops you cold. It says they know your darkest secrets. They claim they've hacked your webcam and recorded you doing something you'd never want anyone to know about. Then they drop the bomb. If you don't send them a ransom, they're going to share this evidence with your friends, your family, and coworkers. Everyone. I mean, your heart races. What if it's true? That panic and that dread, that's exactly what they're counting on. But don't worry. Today, I'm breaking it all down. We're going to learn why this scam works, how scammers manipulate your emotions, and most importantly, how you can protect yourself. And trust me, you'll definitely want to stick around because at the very end, I'm going to share a bonus tip that could save you from falling into another sneakier trap that scammers use. You don't want to miss it. Hey, this is Steve again. As a retired search and rescue pilot and consumer debt expert with over 40 years of experience, I've seen people in all kinds of tough situations. And trust me, this one hits you right where you're most vulnerable, your privacy. But once you understand what's going on, you'll feel a lot more in control. Hey, be sure to ring that notification bell to stay informed, and let's get started. These emails strike at your privacy. They accuse you of visiting adult websites, which hits a nerve for so many people. I mean, be honest. If you ever got an email like this, what would your first reaction be? Panic? Well, that's exactly what they're counting on. And here's why this scam is so effective. It's fear of exposure. The idea that someone might be watching you in a private moment is terrifying. Even if you've done nothing wrong, the thought alone is enough to make anyone panic. I mean, no one wants to be caught right-handed, right? If you know what I mean? Visiting an adult website is way more common than people think. About 30% of all internet traffic is connected to adult content, and around 40% of people have visited one at some point. Now, scammers use that fact to make the scam feel plausible. You start thinking, could they really have something on me? Then there's the shame and stigma. I mean, even though it's common, there's a lot of shame and judgment around adult content. The fear of being judged by family, friends, or coworkers can send you into that panic. The scammers know this and count on you feeling too embarrassed to even deny the accusation. Because let's be real, even if you haven't done anything, explaining that all to grandma is not on your to-do list. But what are the real chances they've hacked your webcam? Well, stick with me because we're about to get into that. And here's how this scam usually goes down. You get an email claiming they've hacked your webcam and recorded you in some embarrassing or compromising situation. They demand a ransom in Bitcoin, threatening to release the footage if you don't pay. And here's the truth. The chances they've actually hacked your webcam? Almost zero. It's a bluff. They're counting on you to panic and act without thinking. Now, you might be thinking, can someone really hack into my webcam without me knowing? Well, while it's technically possible, it's highly unlikely without your permission or without you installing malware on your device. Most modern devices have security features that alert you when your webcam is being used, like that little light next to the camera. If that's off and you're not on a video call, you're probably in the clear. Hackers would need to trick you into downloading malicious software for them to access your camera, and that usually comes from clicking suspicious links or opening attachments, which is why these emails try to scare you into doing exactly that. If you're worried about malware, here's what you can do to check your device. For Windows users, open Windows Security, previously called Windows Defender. You can find it by searching Windows Security in the Start menu. Once open, click on Virus and Threat Protection and run a quick scan or a full scan to check for malware. For Mac users, while Macs don't come with built-in antivirus software, you can protect your device by using trusted third-party tools like Malwarebytes, Avast Security for Mac, or Bitdefender Antivirus for Mac. You can download one of these from their official websites and run a full scan to check for any malicious software. These tools are designed to detect and remove malware specific to Mac OS. If you already have third-party antivirus software like Norton, McAfee, or Kaspersky, make sure it's up to date and run a full scan. These programs are built to catch and eliminate malware from your device. It's always a good idea to scan your system regularly. You can set it up to happen automatically. You want to catch any potential threats before they become an issue. And as always, avoid clicking on suspicious links or attachments. That's how most malware sneaks in. Now, here's something you need to be aware of. These scam emails sometimes come with PDF attachments inside. It's generally the ransom note, often with more details about what they supposedly have on you. Those attachments, well, they can be dangerous. And here's what you should do. Never open the attachment directly. PDFs can carry malware that can infect your computer or your phone. Open attachments safely. If you really need to view the attachment, open it in a sandboxed environment. A sandbox isolates the file from the rest of your system, so even if there's malware inside, it can't cause damage. And I've added instructions on how to set up a sandbox environment for the Mac and the PC. It's in the reference guide, which is in the video description. Just delete the attachments. Honestly, the safest move is to delete the entire email without opening anything. All right, Here's where you can take control if you ever get an email like this. Follow these steps. Don't panic. Take a deep breath. It's designed to scare you into a quick reaction. Slow down and think. Don't respond and don't pay. Don't reply to the email, and definitely don't send any money. Paying the ransom makes you a target for more scams over and over and over again. It's like putting up a neon sign that says, "Easy mark right here." You should secure your accounts. I mean, if the email mentions any of your passwords, change them immediately. Use a password manager like 1Password or Dashlane or LastPass to create strong, unique passwords for each website. This way, if one password is compromised, your other accounts stay safe. And the biggest mistake? Well, it's reacting out of fear. When fear drives your decisions, you're more likely to make rash choices. You might fall for the scam, or worse, compromise yourself further. Remember, the scammers are counting on you to panic and act before thinking. Now, the official advice here is to report it to your local law enforcement or the FTC if the email feels threatening or crosses a line. These scams are being tracked, and the more we report them, the better we can prevent future attacks. But let's be real. How many of us are actually going to file a report? I mean, sure, that's the smart thing to do, but we all know it's probably not going to happen. Still, if you're feeling motivated, it's always a good step to take. But last but not least, keep a close eye on your financial accounts and credit. Data breaches are common these days, so staying on top of your personal info goes a long way in protecting yourself. All right, you made it to the bonus. This is important. Scammers have a sneaky trap that catches people who ignore the first scam. After they try to hit you with the webcam scare, they'll often follow up with an email that says, "Hey, I'm a hacker, and I saw that someone tried to scam you. For a fee, I can help you protect yourself from them." It's like the internet version of, "I'll take care of the guy who scammed you for the right price." It's a scam within a scam. Now, that sounds tempting, but it's just another scam. They know you're vulnerable, and they're hoping you'll fall for it again. Never pay anyone who claims they can help you avoid scams. It's just another trick to take your money. These scammers are betting on one thing: your fear of embarrassment. But remember, they're almost always bluffing. You're the one in control here. Stay calm, secure your accounts, and don't let fear drive your decisions. Now that you know how this scam works, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with that friend that you know has a lot to get caught doing, if you know what I mean. By sharing this information, you're helping protect your friends, your family, and maybe even someone who's just a click away from making a really stupid mistake. And now you know more of the story. If you like this video, make sure to watch the next one to continue your journey. See ya!